All right, everybody, welcome to another episode. You never want to miss a Monday workout. The purpose of the show is to give the fitness community more life, and we do that by having fitness and wellness professionals come on, and coaches, and uh, you know, other members in the fitness community that have gotten results. So I'm super excited to have Tricia Holness from Divine Counseling and Wellness on the show today. And we're going to be talking about a very important topic called seasonal depression, which is something that I learned about this month. I never knew about seasonal depression. So Tricia, before we kind of dive into the interview, if you would please let the community know who you are, what your background is, and let's talk a little bit about your business, and then we'll kind of dive deep into seasonal depression.
Okay. Well, Tricia Holness. I have a master's degree from NYU in social work, clinical practice. Boy, it's been years, over 20 somewhat years. I've worked in child welfare, different sectors, Office for People with Developmental Disability, ran programs in New York, lived in Rochester, went back in 2013 for an executive MBA because I was in high-level positions overseeing programs. So I wanted to learn more about blending my clinical experience and managing and overseeing programs. So that's why I went back for the executive MBA. I studied at RIT, and then we did some work in Vietnam to complete that process. I was a VP up there for many years in Rochester, and I decided to come back home, and I started to practice. So I left the business sector. And, again, one of my goals was to go out and oversee programs to make sure children who are vulnerable are being well taken care of. So I wanted them to have the same experience that my children will have. So whatever programs we run, everything, colors, smell, food had to be up to par. And so I project managed, did that, but then I had this, how you have this nagging feeling inside of you that you have to fulfill your purpose. And I ran away from doing direct practice for many years. I had opened a practice with my husband many, many years ago. And I said, you do the therapy, I'll do the business. And he's like, really? And years later, fast forward, it was a divine inspiration that says, now you have to stop. And now you have to go out and serve people. And so my mission is to help to solve problems for people who would not normally have access to these types of services. And so I created my brand, Divine Counseling and Wellness, and I started in Newburgh, and now I have two locations. I have a location in Newburgh off 9W across from Alexa's Diner, which is 5020 Route 9W. We have a suite there, and I have a larger space in Middletown, New York, 131 Wickham Avenue. And so I practice there, but I also do a lot of virtual now, because with COVID, we had to, get into technology really quickly and create a space because people were just coming, and we adapted well. And so I could work virtually from anywhere, but there are still people who want that, interpersonal connection. So we still practice in office locally. And that's what we do. We service people. We take all insurances, whether it's the state plan or private insurances. We do fee for service. Our goal is to help people who would not otherwise have access, and those who have access. But that is my mission. So, and mission is why bother? Why are we here? Why were we sent? And it is important to connect with your mission, because your mission in life release dopamine, and that is that effect that we want to know that we are serving. And so I have learned, that in business school. So I said, I got to figure this thing out. So now I am definitely centered on fulfilling my purpose here on this earth. And it is serving those who are vulnerable and those who need help to go from where they were to where they need to be, and connect with their purpose.
So Trish, you just dropped a lot of jewels there, and this is just the intro. We just getting started, right? So a couple of things. First, you're a member at the studio. You've been a member for a while, and I just noticed the shift in you, and I'm just curious, like what happened, right? So you were coming to the studio. You never really, I never seen you as active as you are now. What was the paradigm shift for you? What happened in these last couple of months?
So what happened was because of the work that I do locally, wherever I go, people know me. So I try to keep a very low profile because I want people to experience me in a way in which, okay, it's a small town, you know, she's very, what's the word I'm looking for? She's not as out there. So she's someone that I could trust. I feel safe with her. So I was very intentional because sometimes, Jean, I run into people that I treat. And so, you know, I always want to make sure they feel safe with me and feel safe being in the same space because, again, it's a small town. And I hired this new assistant and, you know, she's like, oh, you got to put yourself out there more. And I said, no, we are completely booked. We, you know, we don't necessarily need more clients. And so I had to, she says, well, you have to put yourself out there. If you said your vision is or your mission in life is to help people, then you need to do more. And she forced me, which is who you've been collaborated with, Kylie. You have to help people in the world. Now that's been prophesied to me over the years when I used to do speaking, that you're supposed to do public speaking or you're supposed to help people. But honestly, Jean, I just wanted to chill. Gym and working out is my safe space. That is part of my treatment plan. That is part of my overall, you know, self-care. So when I enter into whether it's going to church or whether it's going to work out, I just want to go in and tap out because I'm in a pensive state. You know, I'm just coming in to handle my business because when I leave there, I'm on. It's like lights, camera, you're on. So when I come in, that is my space to de-stress. I come in, do what I have to do, and I bust a move. But then, you know, I said, but so Kylie says, you got to do this. And I'm like, okay. Never in my life would I thought I would have started it there. It was just one of those things. I could have done it anywhere. But most people, you know, you'll see online and dabbled up. And I wanted to see my people. I want them to see me natural. I wanted to practice what I preach. So I'm telling you, my business is divine counseling and wellness. You're going to see me out here in the raw blood, sweat, and tears. You know, you're not just going to see me dolled up in my office. You're going to see Tricia working out and doing it. So I'm going to put a business.
Putting in the work.
I'm going to put in the work.
Put in the work.
Hard work.
So Tricia, you mentioned that you, you know, one of your missions is to help people that don't have access. Yeah. Can you dive into that a little bit? What do you mean, people that don't have access?
So in some of the socioeconomically deprived communities, and specifically persons of color, you know, historically, they did not have access to services that I offer, like psychotherapy or therapists, you know, and because, you know, and I'm not saying everyone, I'm just saying, you know, on some of the Medicaid or the managed Medicaid plans or Medicare, you know, they didn't necessarily have access. Or within our culture, we were kind of taught not to really go outside. What happens in the house stays in the house. And, you know, or we could pray about it. There's nothing wrong with that. But then when you pray, you still got to listen, and you listen to go get help. But because of our intergenerational transfers and, you know, what has happened, you know, we were taught to suppress our pain and our emotions. So we hold it in and then we either implode or explode, which is why we have such high rates of, you know, physical illness, heart disease, you know, diabetes, autoimmune diseases within the culture because we didn't have an outlet. And plus, persons of color has a higher threshold for pain, but can become dependent really easily because when you hold it in, and that again has a lot to do with the intergenerational transfer. During slavery, you were not allowed to express your emotions. You had to hold it in because, you know, if you talk or you cry, you get beaten more. So it's just an intergenerational transfer that has happened. And we have been conditioned to suppress or avoid or deny dealing with what was going on within us again. And so my job is to educate and to be that voice and that access point for those who were not fully aware of what we do, that you're not crazy if you seek someone to talk to. It is a mental exercise for the mind. Mental health, just like physical health, is important. You know, in our community, we said we're going to the doctor, we're going to get our medication for our diabetes and all of that, but we're not allowed, or we were never taught because of the stigma to say, I'm going to a therapist to deal with my mental health, to get a mental health checkup. So my job is to be that access point and to be as transparent and as real so that all my peeps and everybody and anyone can come in and be themselves and say, listen, you know, I just want to kick it with you, and I could kick it. I could kick it. I'm very fluent in working with all types of people, but again, I do want to be available to those who are somewhat ignorant to what therapy and what mental health means and can do to help them navigate this thing called life.
So Tricia, you said a term that I've never heard before, which is intergenerational transfer. Is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
So that's gonna be episode number 2, right? I don't want to dive into that too much right now, but can you please break down, give me the cliff notes of what you mean by intergenerational transfer? What is that?
So things that have been transferred from generation to generational to generational. Some things come through bloodline. Some things come through learn what we've been taught, how to manage stressors. An example, within the African American community, given what had, again, the experiences of slavery and what has happened, there's this idea that if you have a problem or you need to talk to someone, you keep it, what happens in the family stays in the family, right? And so now way back when, if a slave was getting a whipping or something, you can't cry or talk about it, you had to hold it in. So this idea of holding in your pain, suppressing your pain, has transferred down from generation to generation. We call it learned behavior. It's just not talk about it, okay? We're just not going to talk about this right now. What's going to happen? What's the point? Nothing's going to happen. So those types of thinking transfers from one generation to the next. And it's just a way how one had been taught to manage certain issues. Just don't talk about it, just hush. For an example is when I'm getting a little deep, but I want to break it down. Back then, one of the slave girls are being beaten or raped, and she can't express that pain. And the older moms would say, hush, child, just holding it. Don't talk about it. Don't express the pain. So you hold that pain in. And that transfer, just hush, just don't talk about it. Hush, because it's the shame that's attached to it. And if you talk about it, you're going to get beaten more anyhow. What's the point? So then that transfer, creates a sense of hopelessness, a sense of helplessness, and a sense of powerlessness. And that sense of helplessness and powerlessness and hopelessness gets transferred down from generation to generation to generation. So sometimes when adversity comes, you collapse in it. You just feel, well, what's the point? Helpless, hopeless, and powerless because it's trauma. So intragenerational transfer, and it will transfer from generation to generation because it's learned. It's how we've been taught. We're taught by the environment that we came from. So the nuclear in the family, what we see in our nuclear family, our brains are wired. It's like our brains are like a computer. And so between birth to 5 years old, man, whatever you put in that whatever data you put in the brain is the organ, but the mind is the data you put in it. But personalities form, and so you just keep putting. So what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we touch, form these beliefs, and those we're hardwired. And again, we just continue through life, and by 8 to 10, the brain prunes again whatever you put in there. So now, as this child, what the child sees, what the child hears, the child replicate. And so that's why it's important to create an environment for children that is nurturing at those pivotal points in their life, because we go back to what we've been taught, what we've seen, what we've heard in our young age. So go ahead.
So Trish,
yes.
We got it. Part 2 is going to be the intergenerational transfer. That was a lot. Thank you for breaking that down for me. How do you, in your professional opinion, how has COVID affected mental health around the world or in this country?
Well, a blessing and a curse. Of course, COVID, while there was such a spike, the fear, COVID created deep fear within individuals, and there was high rates of anxiety and depression, my panic attacks, and so much has happened to people during that time frame. I spent a lot of my time, it was so hard, Jean, because I'm online and I'm dealing with families who are losing people every day. One woman had about 3 or 4 individuals, and were not able to mourn, their family members in the traditional ways. So that then created more trauma on the surviving family members, because, you know, part of grieving process is the initial beginning of grieving is to be able to mourn in our traditional ways, and that was taken away somewhat. So it was really difficult for a lot of people, but it also opened up the avenue for more access, because before COVID, I mean, virtual, man, we weren't doing virtual. We had to go through so much just to be able to go online, you know, and as soon as COVID hit, man, we had to transition over quickly. So now not only people in the local community could access us, people from all over. I was treating people from everywhere. And then insurances now were, you know, they had unlimited sessions. Before, you know, some companies will, you know, some insurance companies will kind of limit, but now since COVID, unlimited sessions.
Wow.
You could have 2 sessions. You could go to every week. You could go by twice a week for some insurance. So it's helped to now, and again, the education. So it was a lot of promotion of mental health during COVID, and that has helped. So more people are coming, and more people have come. More people in the Black and Brown community have access mental health and seek therapy now more so than before.
So Trish, let's kind of dive into this seasonal depression, right? I heard this term earlier. Actually, I think it was like towards the end of last month. And just to give you some background about myself, you know, when I first started coming to Orange Theory back in 2020, I lost my mom to cancer. You know, I separated from my ex-wife. I wasn't, you know, I didn't see my youngest daughter. And I was really depressed and I was just in a bad place, right? And even for me now, like, you know, we're in the holiday seasons. I'm not really too excited about it, you know. I've taken up hiking. Hiking is my therapy. It's my outlet.
Good.
And so on the holidays, Thanksgiving, I was on the mountain.
Good.
Christmas Eve, right? This weekend, I'm gonna be on the mountain. Christmas Day, I'm gonna be on the mountain, hopefully. It's just my way of dealing with the trauma that I've had. So when somebody mentions seasonal depression to me, I'm like, wow, you know, that is definitely a thing. Once Thanksgiving hits for me,
yep.
Like I know that it's going to be a difficult time. So I try to keep myself active. I try to hike a little bit more, but it's not a term that I've heard before. So what is really, I know there's a whole bunch of different depressions out there. What is the difference between seasonal depression and you think all the other depressions that are out there in the industry right now?
Well, that's a good question. Those are great questions. And I want to commend you for the work that you're doing on yourself, being intentional. Nature helps, walking helps. Nature is one of the best therapy, because you could go out there and meditate and be still. Mm-hmm. And still in silence will be your confidence. So when you're still and when you're silent, you hear the voice within. And it also calms you. You've had a lot of losses, and loss to someone passing and loss to family. So most people, we're trained, you know, most people seek help for grieving someone that has passed, but most people don't grieve the loss of a relationship, disenfranchisement. You know, it's still a loss. Your body still responds emotionally to that loss, and you have to grieve it. And that is why grief work is super important. Because the reason why seasonal affective disorder or SAD is so much more pronounced during the fall as we transition from winter, summer to winter, it's you know, the sun, less sunlight, of course, you know, less sunlight, is darker, quicker, and also the holidays. The holidays brings up a lot for people right around when, you know, October comes, the mood begins to shift. Because what happens around the holidays? Most people traditionally spend time together. You know, they spend time with family. You start to remember the loss and how things used to be. And it does evoke, it brings up the feeling of sadness. Because there are 4 main emotions, energy in motion. Think about that, energy flowing through you. Because emotions is triggered by, you know, a thought, our senses. And so this energy flowing through you, you have one, sadness, you have fear, right? You have anger, and you have joy. So when the emotion of sadness is triggered, sadness is not a bad thing, right? It's an emotion. Now we have to measure the intensity of the feeling that is being evoked. And that's how our body responds to the sadness, right? So if it, you may have like despair, hopelessness, powerlessness, helplessness, feeling down, just and you're perseverating, meaning that you're thinking over and over about those, that you have the thought, and thought triggers emotions, right? And then you're in that thought long enough, you've created a belief that it's just going to be helpless. I'm just not going to be able to get through this. How am I going to afford to buy the gift? All those thoughts comes up, and thoughts triggers those emotions, and the body interprets the emotion as feelings. And you stay in the negative self-talk long enough, your body responds to it, and you start feeling low and down. And so that's when now you're bordering on depression. Okay, so I want to kind of walk you through, and I'm going to do it carefully so that people understand really what depression is, because it's a mood disorder, right? There are a few mood disorders, but we're talking about depression right now. So it is a common mood disorder that is categorized sometimes as major depression or major depressive disorder or clinical depression. And what it is a feeling of sadness and helplessness and hopelessness and loss of interest. And this happens over a period of 2 weeks or more. That is when you should diagnose depression. So let me walk you through what you should look for. Depressed mood most days, nearly every day, okay? Diminished interest in pleasurable activity, like how you used to like to work out and you like to do certain things. All of a sudden, man, you're not even getting up to do that. And it's most days, all days for over a period of 2 weeks, right? Significant weight loss when you're not even intending to something. You just be so sad and down that you stop eating. You forget to eat and you start losing weight, or some people overeat. Because the thing with seasonal affective or seasonal depression, you overeat a lot of high carbs, because when you're stressed, you crave carb and sugar. Just so you know, the stress response hormone is kicked in, and you start to stress eat.
So Trish, hold on. Just say that one more time. Just say that one more time. I just want to be clear. One more time.
When you are stressed and high stressed, we crave carbs and sugar, and we want to soothe ourselves. And so we'll just, so that's where the weight gain could potentially come in with one of the symptoms of what you should look for with major depression. Okay. Now slowing down in your thoughts, this is kind of like just dragging, man, and reduction in how you move, just slow. We call it psychomotor agitation, but I'm just breaking it down to you. And then fatigue, loss of energy. You just can't seem to get it going. Feelings of worthlessness, hopelessness, guilt, excessive inappropriate guilt, because some people with losses or divorces or certain things, they live in the state of guilt and make guilt, shame, and condemnation our best friends, which are the worst feelings you could live in. Okay, they will eat away at you, okay, and tear you down. And difficulty concentrating, indecisiveness, and then recurrent thoughts of suicide and having suicidal ideations with or without a plan, which is so super important. But we need to if you have 5 out of these that I just discussed, you do need to get a checkup immediately. 2, 1 being depressed mood for most days, and the other diminished interest in pleasurable activities. And any form of suicidal thoughts or plan, you do need to seek professional help immediately. Your mental health is real, and pay attention to our friends and our family members, because especially, again, we talked about the intergenerational transfer in the Black community. It is where you're supposed to just be strong and just keep going, and depression, it manifests a little bit differently through irritability and anger and lashing out. So we still have to pay attention. You'll still have these symptoms, but because, again, of the intergenerational transfer, you don't got time to take a break. You have got to keep going, because you have got to prove that you can handle it, and you have so much on your plate, so you don't have time to stop. And you're holding this thing in and you implode. And that's not, you don't have an outlet. And what happens? Our body, our organ cannot maintain such overactivity of the stress response hormone, cortisol and adrenaline. Constantly, you're living in what we call fight, flight, or freeze, the survival brain. We call it the reptilian brain. It's part of the limbic system that's called the amygdala. We live in our emotional brain day after day after day. Think of a smoke detector. It is only supposed to go off if there is a fire, a threat of a fire, correct? It's an alarm. And So now think of our fight or flight response. If we live in fight or flight response every day, all day, it's like your smoke detector is going off all the time and you don't even know it because you're living in such a hypervigilant state. You're living in such a stress response state. And after a while, our organs break down. And that's when you start seeing dis-ease create disease in our body. Dis-ease. You see how it, and over time, what do you think happens? We break down physically, mentally, emotionally.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Trish,
Yes, sir.
what causes seasonal depression?
Well, people who are predisposed to depression and bipolar disorder, it spikes around this time, could potentially. So we always try to get in front of it. So all these symptoms that I've described, but also just simply just the change in from summer to winter, the fall, the lack of sunlight, the lack of vitamin D. Just, again, having gone through losses, anticipating the holiday, feeling financially stressed, feeling that you have to fit in, feeling that you have to provide. It's a lot of pressure.
So Trish, let me ask you, like in your practice, what do you feel is the number one reason why people are dealing with this seasonal depression? Is it death? Is it finances? Is it loss of life? Like what is the number one cause of this seasonal depression?
It's hard to say there's a number one cause because remember, it's some people, again, the predisposition to depression and the mood shift. With the change in season, it alters your mood.
That's crazy. I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that before. So from winter into spring, right? You got winter.
The season.
Your mood changes?
Oh yes, biologically. What is it called? It's called, there's a term, circadian rhythm. So it's our biological clock. And we're you know what I mean? And the reduction in sunlight does something to our body. And that could be like, it's just a switch that turns on. And all of a sudden, because all of my clients right around October, like, I normally do a feelings check-in and I'll ask, how are you feeling? And you can't say, okay. So that's not a feeling. You got to give me a feeling. And then I'm fine. No, that's not a feeling. And then I'll get, oh, I'm so tired. I get up when it's dark. I leave my house when it's dark. I come home, it's dark. By the time I'm home, I'm so tired. I don't have any energy. And then I have to do also, it starts with the changes in time. Believe it or not, our body is interesting, you know. It's in the summer months, you're alive and it's enjoying the vitamin D. And remember, the sun is amazing. You know, the sun also provides vitamin D, so it gives us a little bit more energy. So when that's shifting and your body's shifting along with it, it's sometimes the body takes time to catch up with the change. And it creates some inner resistance. And it takes time. So maybe after the new year, you'll start to feel, yeah, you get used to, you know, I mean, you might have experienced it. You know, when the clock changes and it's darker, does it take time for your vision to adapt and adjust to drive in at a certain, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, it does happen. It's our biological clock is like, oh, the circadian shifting, the rhythm, our body's off.
So what about people that live like in Florida that have sun all year round, and then you have people that live in like, I don't know, Antarctica where it's cold all the time? Like,
oh yeah, well, they may experience it too. But I had a friend that she had done some work over in Antarctica. Oh my God, where it's like dark for 6 months, and the depression. She explained the depression was bad.
wow.
It was dark, you know. But you know, when you talk about different seasons, you know, we live in the 4th season. So, you know, but people in Florida experience depression because even though it may be warmer there, it's still a shift in temperature. Things change. It's the season, the shopping, the expectation, the holidays. You know, there's a lot of pressure outside of the temperature itself.
Yes.
The pressure to people who are lonely. You know, some people kind of marry the two, being alone and loneliness, because you could be alone and not lonely. Loneliness is a state of being. And so that being alone not having a partner. You know, some people say, Trish, I just stare at the four wall and I don't have anything to do. I don't have any family to spend the holidays with. I've lost family members. So a lot of it too could be triggered by just that connectivity, that human connection or lack thereof.
So how do we treat this seasonal depression, and what can one do to improve it? Like, obviously, you know that the holidays are coming. So for myself, I already knew, because for the past 2 years, since 2020, holidays come around, I already know my body kind of shifts, right? Like you said, beginning of October, end of October, I already know. So I know, listen, I need to work out more. I need to schedule more hikes. I need to make sure I'm spending more time with family, because I know around this time, I start to feel a little bit different. And I tell my family, I said, listen, check up on me. If you guys don't hear from me, like, give me a call, give me a buzz, let me know how you're doing, because it's right around, and you're right, the seasons start to change, it starts to get a little colder. And it's just like an automatic for me, like I start to feel different. So I know I need to beef up my efforts a little bit. But in your professional opinion, what can someone do to treat the seasonal depression?
Get in front of it. We talk about proactive planning, because when the body internal clock is disrupted, it kind of could create a shift, and it could kind of lead to this depression, right? So we begin to have these obsessive thoughts. And when you obsess over thoughts triggers emotions. And with these emotions, that falls under the sad emotion, is one of it is depression, the feeling, right? So we talk about creating a plan. So I do plan with my clients that I'm seeing now. We do proactive planning. Because we already know, what's going to happen. So let's get to it. And they start to have their self-care plan. So for those who exercise, we know we're going to boost that up. We talk about the affirmation. We talk about reframing those thoughts. So we have thoughts, right? And you could create affirmations to offset the thoughts. For example, proactively saying it's just going to be bad for me. Well, you're already putting it out there that's going to be bad for me. Rather, I'll say, well, let's just say it's going to be a great season. Let's just start telling yourself that. Let's just start pumping different types of thoughts inside of you. It's going to be great. You know what? I know what has happened in the past, and I know that I've had some losses. I'm gonna try my best this year to enjoy this season. So you're now being more intentional. So you're putting this intention out there, which is a desire. But desire and fear, if they cohabitate, create inner resistance, split energy, and that's the problem. So if you set the intention and the desire, you now have to water that seed. And watering the seed, it's like things that you could do every day. What do you do daily? What do you do weekly? So I get up every morning. How I start my day, I meditate. I shut it down. I literally meditate morning and I meditate at night. And people say, Tricia, it's so hard to shut it down. Just start basic. Just visualize. You could use visualization. Think of someone or something that brings you a smile. I always say, if I'm going to Jamaica, I see myself on the beach before I get there. So I activate my senses of taste and scent. I feel the sun on my skin as the sun. So you could do visualization. You could do positive self-talk. You could exercise a little bit more. I think you should increase your activities, because exercising is amazing physiologically what it does for the body. It is a natural therapy, that endorphin and those adrenaline and all the great neurochemicals brain. It is so good to exercise. Some people are not able to exercise, so they could do other things. Journaling, it's so therapeutic. You could write yourself love letters. You could really start loving yourself a little bit more.
Hold on, Trish. Well, I'm not that's new too. You could write yourself love letters. I've never.
So how you gonna go out there and love somebody else unless you love yourself first? You have to tell yourself, I am a bad mother. Shut your mouth, man. I love me some me. Why? You know what? I am awesome. I will write a letter to myself and say, today was a good day. I appreciate how much I interacted and what I did today. I thank me for, because when I do couples therapy, there are 3 things couples have to. I thank you, I appreciate you, and I love you. I do the same thing for myself. I really appreciate today. I did a great job with this, and I love me some me. I love everything about me. I look in the mirror. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. So you got to love on yourself first, because when you do that, you radiate that energy out and you connect it back to you. But if I'm walking around saying that I'm just a hot mess, I'm going to attract a hot mess. And we're not going to do that now.
We don't want no problem.
Now.
So Trish, when should somebody seek medical treatment, right, for this seasonal depression? When
should they treat mental health
talk about the signs, but what's your opinion on when it, at what point?
Like when they start, if they're feeling that depressed mood all day, every day, and they have a lack of motivation and really just have a hard time really focusing and concentrating, they really should seek help. You don't want to sit in it too long. Any thoughts of suicide, any thoughts of hurting themselves, why not get a mental health checkup? We do physical checkup all the time. When you go to the doctor for a physical checkup, you're going to do blood work to see if there's something physically wrong with you, correct? Then you call, my blood work came back. I want to know. So why not do a mental health checkup too? Just to see, just do some assessments, just to see where I am, establish a baseline. And for most people, if they want to do it around their birthday, like they do their physical, or around October, why not have a mental health check-in? To see, where am I on this spectrum? Same concept. We got to make this real. This cannot be a taboo anymore. It's 4 walls that governs our life: mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. By the time it gets to the physical, man, it started here. These thoughts triggers these emotions, it throws us off.
Yes. Which Trish, I want to touch on this a little bit, right? You said our thoughts transfer into emotions, and then our emotions transfer into feelings.
Physiologically, right? Yes.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? That was a great golden nugget.
So what is a belief? A belief is a thought that we think about repetitiously, right? And we form these beliefs. And some of these beliefs could be good or it could be faulty, right? But it comes in through what we hear, or see. It's through our senses. And so that's why it's important to watch what we see or hear or take in, because you create these, it creates it triggers an emotion. And the emotion is, now feelings are how our body react to or respond to, interprets the emotion. And so if you keep having the same thought or hearing the same words or watching the same thing, and it's all negative or unhealthy, after a while, you're going to start to believe it. So thoughts triggers emotions, or body responds and interpret the emotions as feelings. And you have the same thought, you have the same feeling, you have the same behavior. Over time, you create a habit, good or bad. So for example, I'm really having a thought that, I'm never going to get this job, or life just never work out for me. And just anything I try just never works. And I'm just constantly, look, I'm a woman, I'm from the Caribbean. Please, I have to work 10 times hard for everything. I'm just keep repeating this thing. And ultimately, I'm going to start having some feelings of sadness or possibly anger, right? So I have the same thought all the time. I trigger the same emotion, and I start feeling really, really down and hopeless and helpless. And then every time I go for a job interview, I have the same thought, triggers the same feeling. I radiate the same energy. My default is, so after I do this, I'm just going to go eat something, because you know what? I'm really sad. Give me an M&M or something. So I have this thought, triggers the same feeling. I go to this. This is what soothes me. And you could have adaptive coping skills or maladaptive. So it could be, I could say, okay, I have this thought and it triggers this emotion, but you know what? I'm going to talk back to those thoughts. I'm going to say, no, I'm going to show what we call self-compassion. Okay. Self-compassion, kind of just sit. And I'm going to admit to myself that I'm hurting. That's the first step, which is being mindful. I'm going to admit that I'm hurting. I'm going to admit that what's going on with me right now don't feel good, don't look good, and I'm not enjoying it. But so that's the first step. I'm being mindful. The second is, okay, I'm going to give myself a pep talk. So think of what you would tell a child or a friend. I'm going to tell myself that. That is being kind to myself. So 3 steps towards self-compassion. The first one is the mindfulness. Admit that I'm hurt and I'm going through a difficult time right now. And really just talk it out. Sometimes you just sit there and talk it out or write it out. And then you say to yourself, I'm going to give myself the same pep talk I would give a kid, or the same pep talk I will give a friend. Then I'm going to activate my senses. I'm going to take my hand and put it on my forearm, and I'm going to cuddle myself, or I'm going to put it on my heart, the center of the soul, and I'm going to feel those emotions, and I'm going to give myself a pep talk. And then I'm going to tell myself, I'm not alone in this. Things happen. Not that I'm minimizing my what's happening, but you know what? Things happen. People go through things. There are ways to get through it. I'm not alone. So, you could really walk yourself through it and self-soothe. That's why it's important to do a mental health checkup, so you could learn tools.
That was great, Trish. You also mentioned energy and motion. What did you mean by that?
So emotions, our body, we're all chemically based. And believe it, we're cells, and there's constant movements in our body, how we're made biologically and physiologically, all that's going on. We're energy, we radiate energy out. Everything about us is neurotransmitters that transmit information from this thing right here, this computer right here throughout the body. And so when our senses, when a sense of a thought, when we have a sense of just to say smell or taste or whatever is activated, there's the brain sends messages through the body, and it's emotions. That's why we talk about emotions, energy in motion flowing through us, messages that are sent from one part of the body to the next.
So Are you saying if you want to change how you feel, you have to be in motion? You got to move? Like, is movement, will movement affect how you feel?
Well, yes, because it has to flow through you. It has to flow through you. The heart that holds the center of the soul, that holds all of the emotion. When the heart attacks itself, man, what happens? We hold a lot of stuff in. That's why we got to let it out through talk therapy or exercising or journaling or progressive muscle relaxation, or find some way to let it out. Where does it go if you don't let it out? You implode. You hold it in, it starts to affect our organs, or you explode. We just lash out, or explosion is we overeat or we overspend, or we just engage in maladaptive coping skills. That's not the healthy ones, And so that's why it's important to find an outlet and let it out, because it stays bottled up inside of you. But if you move, if you talk it through, it has to flow through you. It has to.
So Trish, you also talked about grief work, right? Yes, so for a lot of people, obviously the past 2 years has been crazy, right? What's involved in this grief work?
Well, grief, it's still understanding how your body is responding, is to know, where you are. I mean, they talk about the stages of grief and loss, but grief is an ongoing process. It's just to be able to understand how you're progressing through the loss, understand your feelings, understand your right, during that time, because, it's a very uncomfortable discussion when you've experienced a loss. Most people don't want to talk about it or say the wrong thing, and they mean well, but to help someone cope through, understand, where they are in that process and help them navigate through the process. That's why it's progressing through grief. You go through this process, and, you go through, because most people for the first year are still in the shock, in the sense of disbelief or perplexity or what just happened. They have not felt. The second year is often tougher, because now you begin to settle in. The reality has really hit. And at that point, people are just like, they don't know how to navigate. So some people avoid it, don't want to talk about it, or overcompensate in so many different ways. So that's why grief work is not something that you just do, because when you have lost someone, a parent, that's a void. Or you've lost a relationship, how do you navigate through those emotions, through those feelings? It is understanding how your body's reacting and how you're responding, and how to navigate and how to interpret these feelings, instead of avoiding it or pushing it to the side, and it doesn't go anywhere. So it's the education behind it, is finding tools, is the support, understanding the difference, understanding what grief looks like, because most people don't grieve.
Thank you for that, Trish. Last two questions. How has being a member of working out at Orange Theory Fitness helped you in your journey?
Well, Orange Theory is, that 60 minutes is lights, camera, you're on. Listen, the brand is amazing, because it's the accountability. You know how sometimes I've been in other environment where I don't feel like going today, and you don't go, but man, you're gonna get up because you're gonna get that extra charge. But also the adrenaline, the support, the coaching, the science behind it. So you see it's in real time and you see the results.
Yes.
I don't do anything unless it's result oriented, as you know. And I do my research, and I don't mind investing in my health. So, I spend a lot of money on other things. So I'm going to spend it on my health and just the environment, man. When you're there for 60 minutes and you're working from the first and as tired as you are, you're just like, I can't give up. And then you got the coaches, it's like that. Think of the birds going down south for the winter, that one bird and all the other birds cheering. So the coaches are that lead bird, that the one bird that's in the front cheering us on. Come on, come on, come on. You could do it. You could do it. You could do it. That does help. It releases a certain chemical called dopamine, which is the reward chemical. You begin to feel good. And so when you leave, that dopamine effect. So instead of me going out and drinking something, or drugging, because I reward myself and trigger that dopamine reaction by giving myself something that is going to be beneficial to me down the line.
I love that answer.
Yeah.
So last question.
Yeah.
Any last words of encouragement to anybody out there that is dealing with seasonal depression?
I wanted to we've lost quite a few people to suicide. And, we tend to see a lot of suicide, but I wanted to end with this, Jean, to kind of point out some of the markers. We call them behavioral markers, verbal markers, and emotional markers to look for in our loved ones and people that we know. So behavioral markers, isolation, and not communicating, like, yeah, what's up? I'm good. And that's not enough. Tell me, how you feeling, man? Spend a little bit more time. When someone tell you they're good and okay, that's not telling you their feelings. And when they say, I tell them, give me a feeling. And if they can't come up with a feeling word, help them. How are you really feeling? And if they say, I'm just feeling a little tired. Okay, what's up? Just don't move beyond it, because this is probably too busy. Stop and take a pause and listen. Just listen. Don't open your mouth and try to solve the problem. Most people just want someone to listen to. Sometimes when people, the behavioral markers, they drive recklessly, their behavior shifted, increase in drug and alcohol drinking. You'll see them researching suicide on the internet and start talking about will. So those are behavioral markers. Then you talk about verbal, they'll start saying life has no purpose, feeling like a burden, feeling stuck, a sense of hopelessness, again, verbal markers. And then the emotional markers, again, look for those depression symptoms, the loss of interest, feeling depressed, anxiety, shame, humiliation, and these mood swings. Important to pay attention to those. We could help someone, and be more intentional about checking in. In addition, my last word is, it is possible to experience bliss. It is possible to experience the life that we have been predestined to live. We literally just have to really tap in and take the time to seek help. We're supposed to live a life of endless possibilities. Whatever it is that we desire, we should be able to accomplish it. It will take you time to understand who you are first and your purpose for being here. And once you are clear on all those things, that purpose, because it's purpose, passion, ambition, passion, purpose. And then you have a vision, and the vision is your stretch goal. The vision is, where do I see myself? And you should always be moving from one vision to the next, man. Vision is where I see myself. What is it Helen Keller said? What is it to have sight and no vision?
Wow. That was really good.
On that one.
we can end on that right there. What is it to have sight but no vision?
Yeah.
Wow. So Trish, how can people get in touch with you? How can they find you if they want to book an appointment, or if they just want to have a conversation?
Oh, well, we have a website, which is easier, Divine Counseling and Wellness.org.
Okay.
You'll see everything about us on the website, and everything is online. We're all electronic. I have other therapists that works for me, and you know, we'll help. We'll do our best to help.
Well, Trish, listen, you know, I love doing these interviews because I believe they leave a stamp in history. And honestly, you know, I created this platform because I wanted to, you know, help our members. I wanted to help people in the fitness community. I want to help myself.
Yes.
But most importantly, I have two beautiful girls, and I always want them to be able to look back, right, and say, or my future generation, right, my kids, I always want them to be able to look back and say, you know what, I'm dealing with this issue. I think my dad interviewed somebody that can help me with that. I think my great grandfather spoke to somebody that can help me with that. And so I'm truly grateful. I'm truly blessed. Most importantly, I want my girls to be able to look at somebody that looks at like them, like you, and say, you know what? My dad knows Tricia. Tricia is highly regarded in the community. And if Tricia can do it, then I can do it. All them girls in Newburgh, okay, that are dealing with whatever, right? I want them to be able to see you and say, wow, like, I know this person, like, I can do what she did, right? And so you're affecting, and I know you know this, right? You're affecting more people than you know. And so I'm glad that I was able to be a gateway to help spread your message a little bit more. Thank you so much. You dropped a lot of information. We definitely have to have another conversation about that. What did you, the intergenerational transfer? Hey, Trish, I gotta tell you, they didn't teach me that in high school, is all I'm saying. I didn't learn about this in high school, okay? Or college for that matter. So
no, I said to Kylie, how did you get me to do this? You know, years ago, I used to do a little talking here and there, but I don't do much of that. I said, how did this Jean get me to do this? And Kylie, you got to do it. You know, I hire a young assistant. She's amazing. And she's just like, you got to do it. You got to help the world. So this is a part of my God-given purpose, to solve a problem. I solved it in working in corporations and helping them and helping people, you know, so, but I know what my purpose is. So use me, Lord, to show someone the way. I'm available to you. That's how I live. And I'm unapologetic about it. And when you come to get help from Divine Counseling and Wellness, we treat you as humans. We love on you. Our environment is quite therapeutic and nurturing. You get tea, you get everything that you need there.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. But I wanted to share the I think it's the suicide hotline. Just so I think I have this number here, Jean, because it's important. You know, I'm just going through what I have it here. Let's see if I could pull it up. You know, I don't know nothing about these phones, Jean. Give me a minute, my assistant, because we have it on my, okay. So national, well, we have for depression, it's a national, it's 630-482-9696. Right. And then the national suicide prevention is 800-273-8255. For domestic violence, 800-799-7233. And I think I saw something online, I think it's 998, if I'm not sure, for text for suicide prevention or depression. So there are hotlines out there. And in Orange County, where we are, they have text for teens. They have a platform called Text for Teens, text the number 4 teens. The teens can talk to someone 24/7. And as always, look on the back of your insurance card where it says behavioral health and call that number and they'll help you source and find a therapist. Unlimited session.
Unlimited. Well, Tricia, once again, thank you so much for being on the show. You never want to miss a Monday workout, where our goal and our purpose is to help members and people in the fitness community gain more life. And with that said, Tricia, we are